Have you ever felt that the world wasn't made for people like you? While everyone seems obsessed with social media, parties, and superficial conversations, you prefer silence. You feel things others don't. You notice details no one else does. And even when trying to fit in, you always ended up being called too quiet, too sensitive, or lost in the clouds. But what if I told you that this weakness of yours is actually a superpower? In an increasingly noisy and artificial world, people like you who think, feel intensely, and see beyond the obvious are becoming rarer and rarer. This video is for those who have always known they were different, but never understood why. Because your time is coming, and the world needs what only you can offer. Carl Jung, while exploring psychological types, identified the introvert as one of the rarest and most complex configurations of the human psyche. Often, they are seen as eccentric, enigmatic, or even out of place, not due to a lack of intelligence or sensitivity, but precisely because of an excess of both. They do not follow the world as it is, unlike the extrovert, who connects with external possibilities, innovations, future ideas, and opportunities. The introvert lives immersed in an internal flow of images, symbols, dreams, and premonitions. Their attention is focused on what cannot be seen but is intensely felt. Reality, for this type, is not made only of facts. A trivial conversation can turn into a field of intuitions. A stranger's glance, a sudden silence, a vivid dream, all of these can contain messages that escape the eyes of others. And this is exactly where the conflict lies. How to live in a world that demands rational explanations, when your way of perceiving is symbolic, intuitive, and often impossible to verbalize. Jung observed that this inner perception does not occur logically or linearly. It emerges as whole images, as insights that cross consciousness. The introvert often knows what, but doesn't know how to explain why. And that is why, when trying to share their visions, they often encounter blank stares, uncomfortable laughter, or worse, the feeling of being inadequate. This psychological type then learns to protect itself, learns to be silent, learns to appear normal to avoid judgment. But inside, they continue carrying a rich world, though chaotic and dangerous. Because the same intuition that connects them with great ideas and visions can also lead them to deep dives into their own shadow. It's common for these people to experience a sense of being out of place from an early age. Not out of arrogance, but due to an unconscious perception that they operate on a different frequency, while their peers are interested in competitions, social media, or external achievements. The introvert is thinking about the meaning of life, the passage of time, recurring symbols in dreams. When they try to share this, they are often met with indifference or mockery. But this inadequacy is, in fact, a sign of vocation. Jung said this type is like a radar tuned to the collective unconscious. They perceive trends before they consolidate. They pick up emotional atmospheres, cultural shifts, spiritual transformations that have not yet surfaced. In times of crisis, their function becomes vital. They sense when something is about to change. And even when they can't rationally explain what they feel, there is a wisdom in their way of perceiving. It's as if they are always one step ahead. Therefore, understanding the nature of the introvert is more than a matter of personality. It is recognizing that there is a kind of wisdom born in silence, that cannot be measured merely in productivity, charisma, or numbers. And perhaps, by recognizing this type within oneself, one might stop fighting their own nature and start living it. But living this way, in a world that doesn't listen, brings its own challenges, especially in relationships. Living as an introvert means having a sensitivity to sharp for the pace of everyday life and a perception so subtle that it often turns into isolation. Not because they wish to be alone all the time, but because being around other people can be exhausting, not just physically, but mentally as well. Just by entering a room, they can already feel the atmosphere. A fake comment, a judgmental glance, an unspoken sadness, all of it is absorbed. They read between the lines, notice micro-expressions, intuit invisible conflicts. Sometimes they don't even rationally understand what they are picking up, but they feel it. They carry within themselves a permanent emotional scanner. And since no one taught them how to deal with this, they end up confused, overwhelmed, anxious. Many believe there is something wrong with them when, in fact, what they have is an extremely heightened, unrecognized ability to perceive. This gift can turn into a burden, especially in a culture that values sparkle, extroversion, and quick speech. The introvert often takes time to respond, not out of shyness, but because they are processing. They are feeling, organizing, translating what the soul has captured. But the world doesn't wait. Silence is seen as weakness, hesitation as insecurity, depth as strangeness. Thus, many end up developing masks. They become experts at seeming normal. They learn to smile when they don't want to follow superficial conversations without engaging, to say everything is fine even when they are boiling inside. This constant effort to adjust is exhausting, and more than that, it fuels a sense of not belonging. But there is another side, because precisely by not fitting into traditional molds, these individuals tend to develop a rare richness. They possess a kind of empathetic radar, which can be incredibly valuable in areas such as therapeutic listening, art, writing, spirituality. They are those people who not only hear but truly listen, who not only observe but truly see, and who have a unique ability to touch others without saying much. Still, expressing all this is a challenge. Their perceptions are hard to translate into words. Many report the feeling that when they try to explain what they feel, they become confused or disconnected. This fuels the fear of being misunderstood, and, as a result, many choose to remain silent, even though they have much to offer. Have you ever been in a meeting, heard a question, knew the answer, but couldn't speak at the moment? Because your mind is processing all the variables, all the possibilities of what could happen if you say it. You think, what if it sounds arrogant? What if it's not the right moment? What if no one understands it the way I feel it? While all this runs through your mind, someone quicker responds with a superficial but confident answer, and then you stay silent. This happens because for you, speaking involves more than just uttering words. It involves feeling the environment, intuiting the impact, predicting what comes next. And in that interval, the moment passes. You are left with the feeling that you missed the chance. That is why your gifts are often only recognized when expressed through indirect means. Art, music, literature, symbolic analysis, spiritual rituals. In these fields, where the unspoken has space. And yet, when they are welcomed by people who recognize them, their vision begins to become shareable. The bridge between the invisible and the visible is built, and then the one who once seemed strange comes to be seen as intelligent. The social journey of the introvert is marked by paradoxes. They need solitude but desire connection. They see others deeply but fear being seen. They capture the pains of the world but struggle to protect themselves from them. If you see yourself in this portrait, know this: your sensitivity is not a flaw. The gifts you carry may be exactly what is missing in the world around you. Some walk around as if living in two times at once, the now and what is yet to happen. These people, silent and disconnected from the stricter social norms, carry a rare kind of vision, and when they manage to express it, the world calls them ahead of their time, brilliant minds, or even geniuses. But most of the time, before that, the world called them crazy. That's why many of the greatest creators in history exhibited strong, introverted traits. It wasn't just about shyness or isolation, but about an ability to dive so deeply within themselves. Beethoven, Emily Dickinson, Van Gogh, Kafka, Jung, Hildegard of Bingen, all, in their own way, touched that space between the divine and the unconscious, between delirium and revelation. And not by chance, many also lived lives of misunderstanding, inner conflict, and silent suffering. The introvert sensitive to the invisible often doesn't know where their own pain ends and the world's pain begins. They feel social ruptures, unheard cries, human contradictions. This intense empathy can make them vulnerable, isolated, or even mistaken for being fragile. The challenge is to not go mad before understanding, to not give up before discovering that this sensitivity is a gift, because the world still has little language to deal with what is subtle. But this is changing. Slowly, people are opening up, and those who for so long seemed strange are now beginning to be heard. If, on the outside, the introvert seems serene, contained, or even disconnected from the world, on the inside, they live in a universe in constant turmoil. They feel too much, think too much, pick up too much, but often cannot organize this excess. And this generates internal conflicts that, if not understood, can turn into anguish, isolation, or deep psychological symptoms. According to Carl Jung, each psychological type has a dominant function, the one that guides their perception and action in the world, and other auxiliary and inferior functions. In the case of the introvert, intuition is this dominant function. It guides them almost magically, but also disconnects them from concrete reality, as their attention is turned to what could be, not to what already is. Because of this, they tend to repress the opposite function, sensation, which deals with the present, the body, and the immediate data of the world. This repression creates an imbalance. The introvert begins to live more in the internal world than in the external one. They may neglect the body, routines, food, time, physical space. They get lost in abstractions, forgetting to pay bills, to sleep properly, to answer messages. And at the same time, they begin to experience a growing sense of drifting away from life, but they don't know how to return. Jung said the key to this return lies in the development of auxiliary functions. That is, the introvert should not abandon their intuition, it is their essence, but must develop other ways of perceiving and interacting with the world. If the auxiliary function is thinking, they can use logic to organize their insights. If it is feeling, they can learn to name their emotions and establish clearer bonds with others. The important thing is to find a way to balance the internal with the external, the invisible with the visible. Without this balance, the introvert can become a victim of their own visions. It is common for them to develop obsessive rumination, emotional hypersensitivity, difficulties with practical action. But this same psychic system, when understood, can become a source of immense power. The integration of the inferior functions, what Jung called the individuation process, is the path for the individual to become whole. It's not about becoming someone different, but about including forgotten parts of oneself. The introvert, for example, needs to care for their body, observe their senses, cook, walk, organize. Another challenge is dealing with the constant judgment they place on themselves. Since they don't follow the standard, they feel inadequate. Comparing themselves to extroverts, quicker, more talkative, more efficient, they end up diminishing themselves. But it's an unfair comparison, because they operate with another kind of wisdom. And as long as they don't recognize their inner value, they will continue trying to fit into a mold that only generates frustration. Integrating one's internal dynamic requires observing oneself honestly, listening to the body, questioning mental patterns, and embracing the shadow, the forgotten parts of oneself. And when this process starts to happen, they begin to see that the problem was never being who they are, but living in a culture that does not value this way of being. For centuries, the world has been shaped for those who speak loudly, act quickly, and trust in numbers. Modern culture, based on efficiency, method, and linear logic, marginalized everything that could not be measured. Intuition became superstition. Introspection was mistaken for apathy, and silence was interpreted as weakness. In this scenario, introverts came to be seen as inadequate, slow gears in a machine that demands constant movement. The educational system is the first to stifle this nature. From an early age, quieter children who reflect before answering, who prefer imagining to competing, who ask existential questions, are seen as distracted or disconnected. They are pushed to express themselves like others, to perform socially, to fit into a rhythm that is not theirs. Few teachers are prepared to recognize the power of a mind that works through images, symbols, and intuitions. And with that, many talents are pruned before they even have a chance to bloom. In adult life, this mismatch intensifies. Loud meetings, aggressive goals, immediate communication, and constant networking create a hostile battlefield for those who need time, solitude. The way the world is structured does not allow their contributions to emerge naturally. But why did this social structure impose itself so strongly? Because the logic of power favors what is visible. It favors what can be controlled, reproduced, sold. And intuition, symbol, silence, all of that escapes. An introvert connected to their own vision is a threat to any system that wants to keep people distracted and predictable, because they don't go with the flow. They observe, they question, they see what lies behind what is shown. That's why so many visionaries were misunderstood, not just in art, but in science, philosophy, spirituality. Think of figures like Socrates, Nietzsche, Teresa of Avila, Jung, Pascal. All, in their own way, challenged dominant thought, not by direct confrontation, but by revealing another way of seeing the world. And this is something the world needs now more than ever. Because we are immersed in a crisis, not just climatic or economic, but existential. We have lost meaning. We stumble under the weight of excess information, but lack wisdom. We have tools for everything, but purpose for almost nothing. When these people start occupying spaces, they do not ask for the world to be quieter out of whim, but because, without silence, there is no listening. Without listening, there is no connection. And without connection, humanity disintegrates. They do not want to be leaders, but, by irony of fate, they are leading a paradigm shift. Maybe you spent your life trying to fit in, trying to be more extroverted, faster, clearer, more normal. Maybe you learned to hide your silence, your sensitivity, your deep thoughts, afraid of seeming strange. But the truth is that the world doesn't need more people who fit in. If you recognized yourself in this video, know that you are neither alone nor wrong. What you perceive, what you feel, what you see without knowing how to explain, All of it has value. And more than that, it has purpose. Your way of being is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a language to be understood. There are activities that can help you endure the world. Reserve daily moments of silence. Use this time not just to listen to what you think, but to what you feel. Write down your inner images, dreams, intuitions. Practice putting into words, even imperfect ones, what your soul is trying to tell you. Read authors who speak the same language as you, like Carl Jung, Clarissa Pinkola, Rainer Maria Rilke, Henry David Thoreau. Allow them to help you name what you experience. Observe your internal patterns. What triggers your anxiety? What exhausts you? Where do you feel you lose yourself? Awareness of these triggers is the first step toward transforming them, and find a way to express what you feel. It may be through writing, art, spirituality. The medium doesn't matter. What matters is that the vision finds a passage into the world. The world is thirsty for meaning, and you are precisely one of the sources capable of quenching that thirst. Not by trying to become someone else, but by being exactly who you are. If you enjoyed this content and want to understand more about life's questions, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who is also one of the awakened.